Good morning and welcome to Ask the Security Guy. I almost forgot what show I was doing. I'm Holly Magnuson here with Shawn Kohrman. And first off, Shawn, I need to say happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Yep. Today is the first episode of season 3.
Oh, wow.
We started, and I've got too many things on. There we go. Get that turned off. Sorry about that. So can you hear me, Shawn?
I can hear you.
Technical difficulties are always so much fun.
Well, that's the way to start off season 3.
All right, now can you hear me and I can hear you?
I can hear you just fine.
All right, good. So, yes, it was August of 2014. We did our first Ask the Security Guy episode.
Wow.
So, this is the start of season 3. And for some fun, we are going to have a great episode talking about Pokemon Go. For those of you who are watching, and if you want to send us a question, you're going to have to do that by emailing training@apu.edu. Google made some changes on us, and with those changes, we don't have a Q&A app anymore. So I'll have that fixed for next month. But for now, you can just email training@apu.edu with any questions or comments. And with that, Shawn, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you start sharing about Pokemon Go.
Well, as you can see, I have a delightful little guest in the background here. No, he is not in the app, so please do not stop by my office with your phone trying to capture him.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. But we did want to talk about Pokemon Go. It's all over the news. It's all over the media. Arguably, we've got people in prison getting traffic tickets, finding all kinds of unpleasant things in unusual places. And it's been really interesting to see the level at which this has risen. A colleague of mine told me this morning that the mayor of New York had put out a thing about it. It's really fascinating to see how this game, this app, is changing a lot of how we operate as a society. On the positive side, you see people actually, going outside and, looking around. Now, granted, they're looking at their phone too, but they're out, in the world.
My son and I have actually taken like 3 or 4 walks together now since this app came out.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, there's all kinds of pastiness walking around outside now. It's crazy. So that's on the good side. And with that, with the app and with the game, there's obvious security concerns. There's obvious, and when we talk about security concerns around this particular app, we're not just talking about electronic security anymore, because this is an app like several others that we've seen, and this is becoming more and more prevalent, where there's a bridge between the technology world and the physical world. For instance, we see it in access control all the time now, where we've got electronic control systems for door locks, or camera systems, or monitoring, or, take your pick. Those used to be closed systems, that were unique to a building or whatever. Well, now they're all interconnected, and a lot of them are centrally controlled over a network or even remotely. So when you talk about that, that's that intersection between the physical and the technology world, between electronic bits and bytes to actual physical things. And Pokemon Go is a great example of that. It's got people out walking around, looking at stuff, looking at the world they live in. So that's a positive thing. But with that comes some words of caution. Not everything and not everyone are friendly. There's the dojo where I train. A friend of mine there posted a great video, and what she put out there was it's a video that talks about the physical security aspect of this from a social engineering standpoint. And as you and I have talked about, social engineering is a big part of security. It's how we manipulate people to do things, right? And it comes in the context of electronic security and internet security and that kind of thing, and technology security. because we typically see it employed for access or for monetary gain of some sort. Well, in the case of Pokemon, it actually goes a little further. Those are still part of it. But with Pokemon now, you also have the risk of abduction, mugging, various kinds of assault, and they're very real threats. The video, and we'll share this in the show notes, but the video does a great job of giving real examples of how this guy walked up to a variety of people, different age groups, male and female, and laid out some story about the app and then had them walking off with him. And in one case, he approached two teenage girls and said, well, hey, why don't you just hop in my car and we'll drive over to where these Pikachu are. And they were ready to hop in his car. And he stopped him and he said, and he started asking him questions, why are you willing to do this with a complete stranger? You don't know me. And they talk about connectedness and the feeling of inherent trust of other players of the game. Well, like we've talked about before, anytime you deal with the idea of trust, that can be twisted. Why would you automatically trust someone who's playing the game? Why would you trust their motivations? Why would you expect them to be benign? But, and it is in our nature to want to trust, I think. My nature is somewhat twisted, granted.
No.
But at the end of the day, I think, we have an inherent desire to be able to trust one another. And this game brings that sense of continuity, of community almost, bringing people together for a common goal or or competitiveness or whatever. But it's also creating some risks that, we need to be thoughtful about. The physical world is as hazardous in a different way as the electronic world. In the electronic world, will you get hurt? Yes, your finances will get hurt, your identity will get stolen, your online presence can get trashed, your name can be defamed, but none of those are really physical threats until you get into the medical technology world. And even there, right now, the threat platform is fairly limited. The risk there is growing, as we become more technologically advanced with some of our medical devices. The risk also goes up with that. But from a large scale perspective, it's different. But, it was interesting. The last couple of weeks, I've gotten notifications from the FBI, multiple. And one of them is talking about the idea that, they're just alerting other law enforcement agencies and saying, look, you need to expect a much higher degree of interaction with the public, because you're going to see a lot more people in and around common landmarks, general other areas, just, people in places that we don't or haven't normally seen a high volume of foot traffic. Well, this is all based on the game, where you have poke stops or you're going hunting for, whatever creature is available, so it's an interesting side effect. I also read an article where hospitals apparently have poke stops in them, and they're actively petitioning to get the poke stops removed because they've got now they've got foot traffic going through hospitals that have nothing to do with medical care or visiting patients or anything like that. Okay, that's going to create a problem. So, one of the questions, and I'll leave this to the viewers to decide, is, are the trade-offs worth it? Because on one hand, we see this tremendous positive of people getting out and about. They're exercising, they're seeing the world around them, they're engaging again, they're getting out of themselves. And one of the things we've seen as a society where we've become very closed in, people don't know their neighbors anymore, kind of thing. But with that interaction comes risk. But the risk is a different sort. Now we're talking physical risk. One of my favorites was I saw a alert come from the Railway Alert Network. It's a situational awareness alert. And what it's talking about is it's alerting railway employees to be on high alert for people in and around railroad tracks, train crossings, all kinds of places that are oddly enough dangerous because you have thousands and thousands of tons of moving steel. But people, out there with their looking at their phone, looking up, looking at the phone, looking up, oh, there's train. And they're trying to get all of their employees on high alert to be aware of people who aren't. So from that physical security side of it, if you're going to play the game, great, enjoy it, have fun, be aware of your surroundings. If you live in or near interesting areas of town, be careful about where you go and when you go. An obvious one that has been in the news a lot: avoid freeways and don't do it while driving.
That's why Mark holds my phone while I drive. So.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah. So, and I was actually talking to a new employee yesterday who her fiance is really big into the game, and she drives everywhere, and she slows down when he tells her to, and so that they keep moving, but
Yeah, I mean, it's a safer way to go. But I mean, I'm sure you see in the news all the different traffic accidents and just basically stupid human tricks that are going along with this thing. So, but we're seeing also, we're hearing about people getting mugged, or people finding dead bodies, people finding other kinds of interesting surprises in the real world, which is, for me, from a security perspective, is really neat to see. Because as we go further along, this intersection, this tie-in between the virtual world and the real world, that line is becoming more and more blurred. So when we talk about security, and this has been a trend over the last couple of years where we've seen this. This app has the potential to make that line even further blurred than it has been already. But now, all that said, on the physical side, on the electronic side, there are some real concerns to be aware of. So, one, the game allows for in-app purchases. So far, the security around that appears to be pretty solid. Again, use good practices. If you're going to do in-app purchases with it and you're going to buy stuff in the game, don't use your bank card. Use a credit card with a low limit. That way, if something happens, if there's a breach, your risk is automatically lowered. Another thing, the game seems to prefer signups with a Google account, either Gmail or Google Apps of some sort. For Android users in particular, make sure that if you do sign up for the game that way, you are not using your APU account. Use your personal account. Just let me put that out there right now. Do not use your APU account for your Pokemon game. Okay.
Do you want to dive into some of the reasons why?
Well, when you set the game up and you fire it up for the first time, it's going to ask you for access to a few things, which in a brief statement is everything on your phone. I went through and set it up this morning just to verify that, and it's asking for access to all of my media and camera and recordings and contacts and files. And that was a really interesting choice of words. It was just files. Just a generic, okay, well, everything on your phone is a file of some sort, period. Then it's also asking for my contacts, and it wants to use my mic and camera, and it's like, okay, so essentially I'm turning over control of my phone or access to my phone to this game. So I said okay to all that, against my better judgment. Just for the sake of experimentation. And then went and read the terms of use. Now, the terms of use are a fun read on this one. As usual, they're in the very fine print, so I suggest a magnifying glass if you're wearing a set of these already. Even if your eyes are good, you're probably still going to need a magnifying glass. But essentially what it says, to put it all in a nutshell, is anything that you do or anything that's recorded in play with the game is open for use by the company. In a nutshell. So you're handing over a lot of privacy and a lot of control and a lot of information when you hit I accept. So you need to be thoughtful. Are you comfortable with that? Is that something you want to do? Because when we talk about risk, we all have different risk levels that we're comfortable with. Some of us are comfortable with very high levels of risk, some aren't. But go ahead, read the fine print on this one. It's fun. It's actually fairly readable for a change. There are parts of it where there's a lot of whereas and wheretofores and blah, blah, blah. But generally speaking, it's pretty clear about what your risk is and what their risk is and what their rights are and what your rights are and what you can expect. Another thing to consider on the electronic side is, you're allowing control of your camera. You're allowing control of your GPS location. That data is going out there because the app needs it to be able to track and correlate where you are versus where some of the game goals are. So that means that data is, again, being shared with another entity. So just keep that in mind. To go back to the account issue a little bit, again, just to be ultimately, very, very, very clear about this, make sure it's on your personal account, whatever account that you use to sign up with. But also, whatever account you sign up with, make sure that you have good password security on that account. We've got a great bit on security.ap.edu about good passwords and good passphrases, how to construct them, how to remember them. We also talk about password managers so you don't lose your mind trying to remember all these things. But whatever account that you're going to hook this up to, the same, and even though we're talking about Pokemon Go, this is true for anything. Any account that you use, for a Google account to sign up with or whatever, practice good password security. You're not using the same password in multiple locations. It's a good passphrase. I strongly recommend a password manager unless you're able to remember all these different passwords perfectly. I know that point in my life is long gone. So keep that in mind as well. If whatever account you're using supports multi-factor authentication, use it. I would say 99.9% of organizations out there offer multi-factor authentication for free. They don't charge for that additional layer of security. I mean, there's the random ones out there that do, but that's extremely rare. As far as the app itself goes, make sure that if you're going to download and install this thing, you're getting it from an official source. There are side loads and black market sources for this, and the code behind them is decidedly malicious and has a lot of interesting side effects. I've already seen code samples from one of them that's making the rounds in the UK. Make sure your cell phone is up to date. If your cell phone prompts you for a software update, do it. Don't just say cancel or another time or postpone it. Make sure your phone is up to date. Android, Apple, I don't care what it is. Make sure your device is up to date.
I'm going to cut in there for a moment, Shawn, because we do have a question that came in talking about Android versus iOS. And the question is the iOS better for the security aspect versus Android, or are they the same? And I actually had this conversation with a couple of our co-working about the one malware that's been very common on some of the bootleg, the Droid Jack.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, malware exists for both. So for anyone to make a blanket statement that iOS is more secure than Android or vice versa isn't accurate. It isn't valid. That argument started years and years ago, and for some reason has survived. Essentially, the rule of thumb from a security standpoint is I personally consider Apple as vulnerable as Android, or iOS as vulnerable as Android OS. At the end of the day, it comes down to the user using the device. If you're employing good security practices, you're using known sources to get your stuff, you're not clicking on links that come from random people, or you're reading emails carefully or text messages. I've been getting a bunch of text messages lately that are phishing. And what it'll do is it'll sideload something when I click on the link. Some of these attacks are geared for Android, some of them are geared for iOS. But the trend has been a sharp increase in the amount of malware available for iOS. That's what we're seeing. And it comes down to numbers. The more devices you see of a particular type out there in the market, the more you're going to see malware populate for that. It's purely numbers.
So that's why the Windows phones are so safe, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
I said that for the benefit of my oldest son, who loves his Windows phone.
I've actually used one, and they're pretty nice. But I mean, it's not my daily driver. But no, and at the end of the day, it's not that they're any more or less secure than anything else. They don't have nearly the market share that Apple and Google do. So we're not going to see much for them, which can lead to a false assumption that it's more secure by default. So yeah, I don't want anybody. It's not a safe assumption that I have an Apple device, therefore I'm secure. Not true. You're really, in today's world, you're as secure as your practices are.
Shawn, we do have another question that just came through.
Sure.
And let's see. I'm anticipating this game being disruptive to our academic mission this fall. I don't really want people coming to the library just because there's an awesome Pokemon there. Sure, I want them to come to the library. I don't know. I probably should have said that. But anyway, Marshburn, but I want them to come for professional expertise in our information services, not to play a game. Can we influence the game producers in how they place Pokemon on campus?
Well, like I said, I mean, there's a bunch of healthcare organizations already petitioning the company to remove Pokestops. I think that's the correct term. And other type of in-game reasons for that kind of traffic. So it's something we can look into. But at the end of the day, I would actually suggest find a way to spin it. If they're coming in anyway, how do we engage them?
Well, one of the things that we've noticed, and I was talking to someone else about it, is a lot of churches are either Pokemon stops or gyms, which, yes, I know a little too much about this game already. And I find that comical that they've used churches, as sites. And I've yet to see the church billboard yet that has said, come join our Pokemon gym or whatever.
Right.
So, but, there may be a way to make a positive spin on it if we can't get rid of the little critters.
Well, and at the end of the day, like I said, it's increasing foot traffic around all kinds of places. And there's a part of me that says, if we've got people out and about already, how do we engage them? How do we get a message to them, whatever that message is? I mean, what I worry about most is their security and safety. Different places are going to have different primary concerns.
So let me see if there's anything else come through. I'm hearing instant messages coming through. That was not a mode that I asked for communication from. Okay. Yeah, Jonathan, we did talk about iOS and more secure than Android in regards to the Pokemon game. I personally I was looking through the articles. I didn't find any articles that talked about definite identified malware hitting up in the Pokemon game. The Android definitely has had the Android Jack malware in some of these off sites where you've not gotten the game through the resource. I
Right.
didn't look at all the articles I found yesterday, but I think Jonathan's question is more, are we seeing something? But at the end of the day, we've got to use best practices.
Yeah, it's perfectly natural for people to have that question about which one's more secure. It, um, but again, at the end of the day, it's all software and combined with hardware. And there's going to be errors in the code, which are going to be vulnerabilities at some point. So with the game in particular, there's an official version on Google Play. There's an official version on the iTunes Store. Where we're seeing the most problems are in countries that the game isn't being distributed yet. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're seeing the black market stuff pop up. And it's loaded with all kinds of goodies. And I've seen screenshots of it. It looks identical to the real game. A lot of the code is identical to the real game. But there's a lot of added code that is not in the real game. But, again, that has to be side loaded. So there's a bit of effort involved in doing that. And then, again, with doing it on an Apple device, you would have to, jailbreak it or something like that. It's where you're already intentionally breaching the security of the device. So, and that's where a lot of this, comes in is when you root it or when you jailbreak it or whatever, you're automatically compromising a lot of built-in security. So, is it fun? Does it give you the ability to do more stuff with your phone? Yes, it does. But it increases your risk level because you've by default disabled some of the built-in controls.
And because we are using our phones more and more as mini computers where, we're accessing banking information and our, work email and that type of thing, you want to have as much security in place as you possibly can. At least I do.
Exactly right. I mean, today, the phone that you carry, I'm seeing more and more people who use only a mobile device. Mm-hmm. In fact, I know of a couple of people that they have computers at home, but they rarely ever use them because everything they do is on a tablet or a phone. So, it's pretty interesting to see that paradigm shift. So, again, security really exists, and it starts with the user, not the device. Your practices, the way you conduct yourself online, is really that's where your security is derived from. The tool is built to do its best to protect you, but at the end of the day, it's just a tool.
Yeah, it still doesn't replace our having common sense and doing good practices and using our phones in a safe way.
Yep, exactly right. So,
well, Shawn, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shawn.
Do we have any other questions out there?
No other questions have come through. So I think we can probably call this a done deal. If you do have questions, there are several ways you can contact us, and so I won't list all of them. We'll be back, hopefully, as far as we know, the first Wednesday of September, which also, as of right now, the first Wednesday of September, we will be doing a hangout with IMT with Don Davis and Jeff Birch, and this will be the community's opportunity to ask them some questions. As they share. Yeah, so it may be IMT asking them questions, but everybody can ask them questions.
That's cool. I got to start working on my list.
Work on your list. And with that, we will say goodbye and have a great day.
All right. Stay safe out there.